Understanding cold exposure begins with defining what it is and how it's practiced. Simply put, cold exposure involves subjecting the body to cold conditions, often through methods like cold showers and ice baths. These techniques have gained popularity for their purported health benefits, especially among men seeking to improve physical and mental well-being. The physiological response to cold exposure is quite fascinating. When your body encounters cold, a series of reactions are triggered. The immediate response is vasoconstriction, where blood vessels narrow to reduce heat loss. This process redirects blood flow away from the skin's surface and extremities towards vital organs. Consequently, your heart rate increases and metabolism ramps up to generate more body heat. This response is particularly relevant to men's health because it can enhance cardiovascular function and metabolic rate. Moreover, cold exposure can stimulate the production of norepinephrine, a hormone and neurotransmitter that plays a role in mood regulation and attention. A study by Hoffman et al., published in the Journal of Thermal Biology in 2015, highlighted that repeated cold exposure increased norepinephrine by up to 530%, which might contribute to improved focus and mental health. Moving on from the physiological mechanisms, let's provide an overview of what this video will cover regarding cold exposure. We'll delve into the benefits, such as enhanced mood, improved recovery after exercise, and potential boosts in immune function. For instance, cold exposure has been thought to reduce inflammation and accelerate tissue repair, which is particularly beneficial after strenuous workouts. However, it's important to note that while there are potential benefits, cold exposure isn't a miracle cure. It comes with its own set of limitations and risks, such as hypothermia or cold-induced injury, if not practiced safely and responsibly. In summary, understanding cold exposure involves appreciating its complexity and the body's sophisticated response to it. From a scientific perspective, cold exposure triggers significant physiological changes that can potentially benefit men's health. However, these benefits should be weighed against the risks and practiced with caution. Stay tuned as we explore each aspect of cold exposure in detail, providing you with a balanced view of this intriguing practice. Now let's talk about the broader implications of these findings. The application of cold exposure extends beyond just personal health. For example, athletes use it to optimize performance and recovery. There's an ongoing debate among researchers and practitioners about the best ways to integrate cold exposure into a health regimen. This video will guide you through current expert opinions and scientific evidence, helping you make informed decisions about incorporating cold exposure into your lifestyle. Understanding the balance between potential benefits and risks is crucial. We encourage you to approach cold exposure with curiosity, but also caution, keeping in mind what works best for your body and health goals. This nuanced perspective will be what we explore further in the sections that follow, providing you with a comprehensive understanding of cold exposure and its place in men's health. Let's talk about the physiological effects of cold exposure. The first thing that happens when you're exposed to cold is the activation of thermogenesis. This is a process where your body burns calories to generate heat. A big player in this process is brown adipose tissue, or brown fat. Brown fat is different from the regular white fat that stores energy. It actually consumes energy, specifically glucose and fatty acids, to produce heat. A study published by Music et al. In the journal Diabetes in 2013 showed that exposure to cold can significantly increase brown fat activity. The researchers found that just 2 hours of cold exposure could increase brown fat activity by up to 80%. That's quite a substantial figure. Now, what's the significance of activating brown fat? Well, this activation contributes to an increase in the body's metabolic rate. You see, when brown fat burns calories to produce heat, it boosts your overall metabolism. Some reports suggest that consistent cold exposure could increase the basal metabolic rate by 5 to 10%. It might not sound like much, but over time, it can lead to noticeable changes in energy balance. Moving on from thermogenesis, let's discuss the cardiovascular benefits of cold exposure. When you step into a cold environment, your blood vessels constrict in a process known as vasoconstriction. Initially, this might sound counterproductive to circulation, but there's more to it. During cold exposure, your body cycles between vasoconstriction and vasodilation, where the blood vessels expand. This cycling can actually improve your circulatory efficiency over time. Improved circulation has several benefits. It can help in delivering more oxygen and nutrients to your tissues. It can also facilitate better waste removal from your cells. Enhanced circulation has been linked to cardiovascular health, potentially reducing the risk of conditions like hypertension. Another important factor is the potential increase in metabolic rate. While short bursts of cold exposure can give a temporary boost to metabolism, consistent exposure seems to have more lasting effects. The reason behind this is partly due to the body's need to maintain core temperature, which requires energy and hence burns calories. It's important to remember that while cold exposure can be beneficial, it needs to be approached cautiously. Too much exposure can lead to hypothermia or frostbite if not managed properly. Cold showers and brief outdoor exposure are practical ways to incorporate it into your day. Always listen to your body and adjust time and intensity based on your comfort and experience level. Now, let's talk about how these physiological changes might impact our day-to-day lives and long-term health. You may have heard claims that cold exposure can significantly boost testosterone levels. The idea is often linked to practices like ice baths or cold showers, which are popular among athletes and biohackers. But what does the science actually say about this? Let's delve into the evidence. First, let's examine the role of testosterone. It's a vital hormone for both men and women, although it's often associated with male traits like muscle mass and libido. The claim is that cold exposure can boost testosterone, thus enhancing these traits. Now, referring to scientific research, a study by Schoenfeld et al. In 2014, published in Sports Medicine, investigated various interventions to enhance athletic performance, including cold exposure. They found no substantial evidence that cold exposure directly increases testosterone levels in the long term. The mechanisms by which cold exposure might influence hormone levels are complex. Cold exposure prompts the body to activate its thermogenic processes, essentially burning energy to maintain core temperature. This process might cause a temporary spike in certain hormones as part of the stress response. However, this response is not equivalent to a sustained increase in testosterone. There is some evidence suggesting minor, short-term hormone changes, but these are not usually significant enough to impact muscle growth or recovery. For example, a temporary increase might be seen immediately after cold exposure, but it typically returns to baseline shortly after. So, should you expect a testosterone boost from cold showers? Realistically, any change is likely to be temporary, and individual responses vary widely. Several factors influence these outcomes, including baseline fitness, frequency and duration of exposure, and even genetics. Cold exposure may bring other benefits, like improved circulation or mental resilience, but it's not guaranteed to elevate testosterone levels significantly. Now let's consider individual variability. Not everyone will respond to cold exposure in the same way. Some people might experience a small boost in energy or mood after cold exposure, while others might find it makes little difference. Age, fitness level, and overall health can all influence how one's body responds. Moving on from the direct hormone effects, it's clear that the perceived benefits of cold exposure are not solely tied to testosterone. Cold exposure might help with other aspects of wellness, such as reducing inflammation or enhancing recovery, which indirectly supports overall health. In conclusion, while cold exposure might offer several health benefits, a significant and sustained increase in testosterone is not one of them. It's crucial to approach these claims with a healthy dose of skepticism and to rely on scientific evidence. As with any intervention, individual results will vary, and it's essential to consider all factors involved. Next, let's explore the psychological impacts of adopting regular cold exposure practices and how they might influence overall well-being. Cold exposure has long been a technique used by athletes to potentially aid muscle recovery and reduce soreness. Whether you're using an ice bath, a cold shower, or even a cool pack, the idea is to harness the cold to speed up the healing process. But how effective is it really? First, let's break down how cold exposure is thought to influence muscle soreness and recovery. When you exercise intensely, small tears form in your muscle fibers. This is a normal part of building strength, but can result in inflammation and soreness. Cold exposure might help by constricting blood vessels, reducing blood flow to the affected area, and subsequently decreasing swelling and inflammation. One key study that explored this is by Bleakley and colleagues, published in 2012 in the Cochrane Database of Systematic Reviews. This study reviewed a variety of trials and concluded that cold water immersion can indeed reduce muscle soreness after exercise. They noted a significant reduction in muscle soreness up to 4 days post-exercise when cold water immersion was applied for 10 to 15 minutes. However, the authors also emphasized that the long-term benefits require more research. Now let's discuss how cold exposure might reduce inflammation. The cold causes vasoconstriction, narrowing your blood vessels, which limits the inflammatory response that can contribute to soreness. This mechanism also helps flush out metabolic waste products like lactic acid from the muscles, potentially aiding recovery. In practical terms, how should one use cold exposure for muscle recovery? Well, many athletes swear by the practice of cold water immersion, commonly known as ice baths. The ideal duration and temperature can vary, but generally, a bath at around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius for about 10 to 20 minutes is suggested. The timing also matters. Immersing yourself soon after a workout is typically recommended. A word of caution though, not everyone may benefit equally from cold exposure. If you're looking to build muscle, some research suggests that consistent cold exposure might actually interfere with muscle hypertrophy. This is because the acute inflammatory response following exercise is a part of the muscle building process. So if building bulk is your primary goal, you might want to limit your use of cold exposure techniques. Furthermore, it's crucial to listen to your body. If cold exposure feels too uncomfortable, or if you have circulation issues, it might be best to skip or modify the process. Alternatives like contrast baths, which alternate between hot and cold water, might offer some benefits without the extremes of cold exposure. This brings us to a broader understanding of recovery strategies. While cold exposure can be a handy tool in your recovery toolbox, it should be considered alongside other recovery practices, such as adequate nutrition, hydration, and sleep. Now let's explore how these other factors, such as nutrition, play a crucial role in muscle recovery and overall performance. Cold exposure is not just a modern wellness trend. It's been used for centuries in various cultures for its health benefits, including stress management. Let's explore how it helps in enhancing stress resilience. When we expose our bodies to cold temperatures, a fascinating cascade of neurochemical changes occurs. Research, including a study by Van Tonder et al. In 2021, published in Frontiers in Physiology, shows that cold exposure can trigger the release of norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter and hormone that plays a critical role in managing stress. This release is linked to improved mood and increased focus. Norepinephrine levels can increase by up to 530% after brief cold exposure, highlighting a significant neurochemical response. These neurochemical changes affect the amygdala, a part of your brain that processes emotions. By modulating activity in this area, cold exposure can make you more resilient to stress. This means you're better equipped to handle stressful situations, maintaining a calmer and more focused state of mind. Now let's consider mood improvements. Data suggests that individuals practicing regular cold exposure often report feeling more uplifted and energized. In some cases, mood improvements have been observed in as little as 3 weeks of consistent practice. It's worth noting, though, that cold exposure should not be used as the sole method for managing stress. While it can be a beneficial part of a broader stress management strategy, relying solely on cold exposure might not address the underlying causes of stress. Practices such as mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, and regular physical exercise should also be part of a comprehensive approach. Moreover, it's important to approach cold exposure mindfully and safely. Gradual exposure, starting with cooler showers before progressing to ice baths, is recommended. Ensure you're in a safe environment and listen to your body's signals to prevent adverse effects. For those new to this practice, consulting a healthcare provider can provide additional safety. Another consideration is the individual variability in response to cold exposure. While many people report positive outcomes, the degree of benefit can vary significantly. Factors such as genetic disposition, current stress levels, and personal health could influence how one responds to cold exposure. In summary, cold exposure can indeed play a role in enhancing your resilience to stress and improving mood. However, it should be seen as a complementary tool rather than a standalone solution. As we explore further strategies, keep in mind the importance of a balanced approach that incorporates multiple facets of well-being. Enhancing mental resilience can seem like a daunting task, but interestingly, controlled cold exposure might offer a valuable avenue for building mental toughness. You might be wondering how exposing yourself to cold can possibly improve your mental endurance. Well, according to Hoffman et al. In 2020, featured in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine, cold exposure is a form of mild stress that can actually enhance your psychological resilience over time. Cold exposure activates the sympathetic nervous system and releases endorphins. These endorphins can create a sense of well-being and accomplishment, both of which are crucial for mental resilience. Imagine standing under a cold shower or immersing yourself in an icy bath. Initially, your body might react with shock, but with repeated exposure, you may find an increased ability to withstand not only cold, but also stress in general. The concept here is similar to building physical strength by lifting weights. Gradual exposure leads to adaptation, and your mental muscles grow stronger. The more you practice enduring cold, the more your brain pathways involved in willpower and persistence are strengthened. Now, let's discuss the psychological impact and the development of willpower. It's not just about enduring physical discomfort. It's about training your mind to handle discomfort and challenge. Willpower is like a muscle. Use it, and it gets stronger. Research suggests that those who practice controlled cold exposure regularly report feeling more mentally tough in other areas of their lives too. This isn't just a personal anecdote. It aligns with how our brains are wired. Anecdotal quotes from individuals who practice cold exposure frequently speak to its benefits, noting increases in determination and persistence. One enthusiast shared, "The cold showers are uncomfortable, but they teach me to push through challenges." Another noted, "I feel more resilient, like I can handle anything that comes my way." But it's important to acknowledge the psychological challenges involved. The initial shock of cold can be intimidating, and it requires a certain mindset to continue. This is where gradual adaptation comes into play. Start with shorter durations and slowly build up your tolerance. This measured approach can prevent overwhelming your system and ensure that the experience remains positive. In essence, controlled cold exposure is not just about braving the elements. It's a practice that taps into the brain's ability to adapt and grow stronger in the face of discomfort. As you incrementally increase your exposure, you may find that your mental resilience in other facets of life grows too. Again, think of this like any habit. Start small and remain consistent. Moving on from the mental resilience gained through cold exposure, we can explore other strategies that complement this approach. Strategies like mindfulness and intentional breathing techniques can further bolster your mental endurance. They also provide practical methods to manage stress and enhance overall well-being. To wrap up, remember, resilience is a skill. Through consistent practice, Whether it be cold exposure or other methods, you can enhance your mental toughness and handle life's challenges with greater ease. Starting with cold exposure can feel intimidating, but it's important to approach it with a mindful strategy. For beginners, the key is to gradually acclimate your body to the cold. Begin with short, mild exposures. For example, you might start by reducing the temperature of your shower at the end for just 30 seconds. Gradually increase this duration by about 30 seconds each day until you can comfortably withstand 2 to 3 minutes of cold water. It's a manageable way to adapt your body without overwhelming it. Another critical aspect is safety. Hypothermia is a genuine risk if you're not careful. The body's normal core temperature is around 37 degrees, 98.6 degrees, and hypothermia begins at a core temperature below 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Symptoms include intense shivering, dizziness, and confusion. If you're feeling any of these, it's a sign to warm up immediately. A study by Tipton et al. In 2017, published in Extreme Physiology and Medicine, discusses the physiological responses to cold exposure and ways to mitigate risks. It highlights the importance of not just the duration, but also the intensity of cold exposure. The study found that even small reductions in water temperature can significantly impact the body, so gradual exposure is essential. Now, structuring a program for cold exposure is another way to ensure both safety and consistency. A well-structured program could look like this. During the first week, focus on cold showers for 30 to 60 seconds. In weeks 2 and 3, increase the duration to 2 minutes and consider incorporating a weekly ice bath, starting at 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 minutes. In the fourth week, try 1 or 2 longer sessions of cold immersion at 10 degrees Celsius for up to 10 minutes. Bear in mind, it's crucial to listen to your body throughout. If at any point the cold feels unbearable, it's okay to stop and warm up. Moreover, never attempt cold exposure alone, especially in natural settings like lakes or rivers where conditions can be unpredictable. Always have a companion who is aware of the signs of hypothermia and can assist if necessary. Safety gear like thermal gloves and booties can also help maintain extremity warmth during colder immersions. It's also worth mentioning that those with certain medical conditions, such as cardiovascular diseases, should consult a healthcare professional before beginning cold exposure practices. The sudden shock from the cold can stress the heart and might not be safe for everyone. This is not merely a precaution. It's a recommended practice to avert potential health risks. Understanding and respecting your body's limits make cold exposure a more beneficial and safer experience. Moving on from safety, we can explore how to monitor your body's response to cold and adjust your routine accordingly. To wrap things up, let's revisit the journey we've taken through the invigorating realm of cold exposure and its potential health benefits for men. We've explored how subjecting your body to cold environments can have a host of benefits, from enhancing your immune response to improving mood and even boosting metabolic rate. These effects are largely attributed to physiological responses like the release of norepinephrine, which can increase by 200 to 300% when exposed to cold temperatures as low as 14 degrees Celsius for short periods. Moving on from the benefits, it's crucial to be mindful of the potential risks and limitations. Cold exposure isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. For instance, individuals with cardiovascular issues need to approach it with caution, as rapid exposure to cold can lead to significant stress on the heart. There's also the risk of hypothermia if one overestimates their tolerance. Hence, moderation is key, and a gradual approach is advised. Start with shorter durations and less extreme temperatures, and always listen to your body. Another important factor is how cold exposure can be integrated into a well-balanced lifestyle. While jumping into a cold shower or ice bath can be invigorating, it's just one piece of the puzzle. Complement it with other healthy habits like a balanced diet, regular exercise, and adequate sleep to truly optimize your health. The idea is to use cold exposure as a tool to enhance your overall well-being rather than a standalone solution. In terms of practical implementation, Methods such as cold showers or cryotherapy have gained popularity. Cold showers are easily accessible and can be tailored in duration and intensity to suit personal comfort levels. Cryotherapy, while more intense and less accessible, offers structured and controlled sessions and is shown to potentially aid in muscle recovery. However, bear in mind the need for proper guidance and medical advice if you're considering more extreme forms of cold exposure. Now let's talk about the broader impact. Cold exposure can represent a refreshing change to your routine, often bringing a new mental challenge that can increase resilience and stress tolerance over time. It's not just about enduring the cold, but learning to embrace discomfort in a way that fosters personal growth. Remember, the ultimate goal is to enhance your quality of life without compromising safety. As we close this chapter, it's clear that while cold exposure holds intriguing potential, it requires careful integration into a broader health and wellness strategy. Treat it not as an isolated practice, but as part of a comprehensive lifestyle overhaul. Feel free to leave a comment with any questions or topics you want to learn more about. Whether it's more on cold exposure techniques, the science behind different health trends, or any other wellness topics, your input is invaluable for shaping future content.